Hello and welcome back, my friends. This is our third week on manifestation from a yogic perspective. And today we are going to be talking about surrender and living in alignment and how those two things come together to manifest our desires in yoga philosophy. If you haven't listened to the other two episodes, I highly recommend you go back and listen to them. We did go through all three of the steps of yogic manifestation in the first one just briefly, and then I have taken a deeper dive in these last two episodes, this one and last week's episode. But just if you haven't listened to any of them, I will give you those three basic steps, which is first to uncover what you are desiring from a soul-based level, not an ego-based level, and then to plant the seed of those desires into our subconscious, right? Getting still and quiet and planting that seed so that it can be heard through universal consciousness. It can be spread out into the world. And the last is then to surrender to the outcome. And that's really what we're going to talk about today. Many people think that surrender is a dirty word, that it is means that you're failing in some way or giving up in some way. It often is just assumed that surrender is a very passive action. But in yoga, actually, surrender is quite active. And it does not mean giving up. It has quite the opposite meaning. It means opening up, actually, opening up to greater possibilities than what we are able to see on our own. And we're going to go into all kinds of detail about that. But before we do that, I want to invite you to head over to my website to check out what I do. If you've been listening to this podcast for a while and you're curious about what it would be like for us to work together, then head on over to my website, check out the Work With Me page. I have a lot of different options as far as different price points and different contact, amount of contact, how frequently we meet. But it's all geared at the same thing, which is helping you to calm your nervous system, get deeply in touch with your intuition so you can act in alignment, which we're going to be talking about today. Hear that inner voice, that inner calling, and then excavate away anything, any limiting belief, any mindset, any core belief that is holding you back from creating a life that feels really good, that feels purposeful, impactful, joyful, peaceful, and a life that feels like you, a life that represents actually who you are at this stage of your life. And, sometimes we often at this stage arrive and realize we don't actually know who we are or what we want. And that's the work that we do together. It's getting to know yourself again, getting to know yourself at this stage of life and what it will take for this half of your life to feel deeply meaningful. And I know we're all searching for that. That's why we came here to this earth. We came here to make meaning. We came here to create. We came here to serve. And we can each do that in our own very specific way. There's not one universal way in which that's done. And we all do it through our dharma and our soul's purpose, but we have to figure out what that is and how that wants to be expressed at this stage of life. So if you are struggling with that and you would like a guide on this journey, please head on over to my website, katiefarinas.com, or click the link in the show notes and check out all the ways that you and I can work together. If nothing else, book a free clarity call. We can chat. If none of the things listed on my website feel good to you, I am always open to modification. So if you and I can come together, we can work on a plan and we can make this really work for you. All right, now on to this week's episode on surrender and alignment. Okay, so surrender and alignment, two of my favorite topics. I think they get such a bad rap. They're so misunderstood. I hope today that what I teach you here today, it clears a lot of that up. because I think that these concepts are so important in our everyday lives, whether we're trying to manifest something or we're just trying to live a life that feels good, that feels meaningful and purposeful and loving. These are two very, very important concepts. In fact, that surrender concept in Sanskrit, it's called Ishvara Pranidhana. And it is one of the niyamas, the 10 ethical guidelines of yoga. So it's not just used in this manifestation process, it's used throughout our entire lives. And surrender in yoga means something very, very different than what we may think of as surrender in popular culture. In popular culture, surrender often has this connotation of giving up, right? I surrender, right? I raise the white flag. I'm done. And that's a very passive action, right? Where surrender in yoga is really completely the opposite. It is a very active participation in your life with the knowledge that there is a divine force at work in your life. So that's really the difference. It is I'm still gonna act, and I'm gonna act in alignment, but I'm gonna do it with this baseline understanding or belief that there is a loving, intelligent, benevolent force around me, within me, that has the bird's eye view, right? It's because for us here living as humans in our human bodies, our perspective is limited, right? That's just the truth. From being a human has the downside of being a human is that our ability to see this grand divine mystery of life is limited. And there is a greater force who can see the bigger picture. And to surrender to that. So that is what we are surrendering to. We are surrendering to the idea that we don't know it all and we don't control it all. But there is this divine loving force that I can work with, right? That I can be in communication with, that I can dance with through life. And that this divine force has my best interest at heart. It is loving and kind and always steering us towards our highest and best if we listen to it and if we pay attention to the signs that it's sending us. And so manifestation in yogic philosophy is less about the outcome. Yes, you may achieve the outcome, or you may achieve something greater than the outcome, right? This or something better. But it's less about that outcome and more about how you live so that you can align with that outcome. Because the universe, when you begin to live in alignment with your values, with your truth, what is deeply and truly meant for you, that's essentially supercharging the universe to bring what you desire from a soul perspective. And we talked about that last week as well, soul desire versus ego desire, to speed up the process of bringing that soul desire to you. So your job here is to trust that there is an all-knowing beyond what you can see and know, and that your job in this surrender is to live in alignment. And when we learn to be present and live in alignment, there's a sense of flow and connection. And that flow and connection helps us to open our eyes and see the magic and the purpose in every moment. So it doesn't insist that a moment be exactly the way we want it to be. Okay, so when we don't have that faith, when we don't have that trust in that divine energy, we tend to clamp down, we contract. And we have, again, the weight of this is all on my shoulders, right? If there's no one else steering the ship here, if I am all alone in my life trying to bring this desire into reality, then every action that I take, every, action that I don't take, every thought that I have, etc., could determine me getting or not getting this desire, right? Bringing this into creation or not bringing it into creation. And it's a very black and white pastel situation. But when we can trust that there is purpose and magic in every moment, when a moment is not meeting your expectation, when a moment has gone so far off the rails of your expectation, you can trust that it is still in your highest and best. And that while you may not understand it, because this is the mystery of life, and you may not like it, right? I'm not saying you're always going to like it, even though this divine force is benevolent, is loving. Sometimes love is harsh, right? We know that. Sometimes love comes in forms that are uncomfortable. But if we can trust, if we can have that basic assumption that we are being held even in our hardest times and that we are not solely responsible for how everything turns out, then that sets us up to melt into the flow of life. So let me try to put it a little more clearly. If we believe we're solely responsible for how everything turns out, then that's when surrender sounds like a nasty word. That's when it signals defeat, failure, giving up. And that basic assumption sets us up to fight life, to fight what is happening in the present moment if it's not meeting our expectations. And it's a battle between what we desire and what is showing up for us. And we will think that those two things are in conflict, right? If we don't have this basic assumption that we are in co-creation with the divine, then if what's showing up for us is not what we desire, then we are assuming that we're in a fight with life, right? We have to grip and claw and scratch our way towards what we want. And it makes us rigid and contracted and narrowly focused, and it eliminates all possibilities that are outside of our awareness. And honestly, it puts us in fight or flight. Okay. So yoga, the practice of yoga, the postures, the breath is really all about nervous system regulation. And when we believe that we are solely responsible and we're clinging and grasping, we're in fight or flight. And what happens in fight or flight is that our field of awareness shrinks down to the size of a pinhole. Okay. The more dysregulated we are, the smaller our focus of awareness is, the smaller the more limited perspective that we have, because you're in survival mode. That's what it means to be in fight or flight, is survival mode. So when you're in survival mode, the body says, I just need to survive. In this case, it's, I just need to get what I want, because on some level you have a belief that if you don't get what you want, that something bad is going to happen, right? Whether that means you're not going to have love, people aren't going to value you, there are many baseline beliefs that you could be having, that you are unworthy, all of these things. And that is a form of not surviving, because it's an ego death, right? And that ego wants to survive. The ego is very self-interested in surviving. So when we believe that we are solely responsible, life is not responding in the way that we want, and we're like, oh no, I'm not gonna get this thing. And if I don't get this thing, then there's some form of ego death, then our perspective narrows and we can't see all the possibilities that actually exist for us to manifest this desire or something bigger and greater than what we originally intended. But if we trust that there is something guiding us that is in our highest and best, then we can relax into the present moment. We can just trust that this divine guidance will supply us with whatever we need, and that whatever shows up is in our highest and best. And when our nervous system relaxes, and you can just feel it, right? Can you just feel a nervous system relaxation? We are more open. We are more receptive. our field of awareness grows, our ability to have perspective grows, right? And we can, from a cognitive perspective, understand that there are an infinite number of possibilities, that there are so many possibilities about how this desire could manifest, and in the number of ways that it could manifest, that we understand that our brains aren't actually capable of we can't wrap our heads around that, right? It is actually impossible for our brains to understand and know the number of ways, infinite number of ways that this desire could manifest, right? But if you're in fight or flight, you can't really grasp that concept, right? You're just like, no, it must happen. That's all I know is that it must happen. But when you're relaxed and you're trusting, you can say, okay, every disappointment, every detour, every roadblock, you can say, this is an opportunity. This is an opportunity for my growth, for greater understanding, for self-discovery, for new ways of new trails towards this intended desire, right? It's like the body. You know, I was a nurse, so a lot of things to me come back from the body, but we have a network of blood vessels in our body that supplies blood throughout our whole body to our organs and our tissues and our skin and everything. And what happens in the body is sometimes, like for surgery, for example, we have to go in and we have to cauterize a blood vessel. And that means basically burn it. So it no longer exists. It cannot supply blood to that region of the body anymore. That's a roadblock, right? That's something coming up in our way to where we want to go. And what does the body do? It creates a detour. It creates a new blood vessel that goes around that original blood vessel and still gets to the same point. Okay. Your body didn't know it was going to need that extra blood vessel. It didn't know it was going to need that detour until it hit a roadblock. And that is us. That is our lives, right? We don't know what detours, what roadblocks are going to come up for us, and what detours are going to be a side effect of those roadblocks, and what we're going to see on the way, right? That's another great example. So if you've ever been somewhere where there's been construction and they put up a detour because there's been construction, and you're used to going the same way, you go the same way all the time. You know these roads like the back of your hand. You're like, oh man, detour, I got to go around. This is going to take longer. But as you take the detour, you're like, oh, this is interesting. I didn't know this neighborhood was back here. Isn't that a beautiful house? Look at that stunning tree. Oh, there's a restaurant I didn't know was there, right? You learn stuff on the detour, stuff that's really valuable to you, stuff that may change what you actually want to manifest, where you actually want to go, because now you have more knowledge, more wisdom, more understanding than you had before the detour. Okay. So when we have that faith and we can relax our nervous systems, we can then relax into the fact that there is always a reason for what is happening, and that along the way, your discoveries are going to change what you want to bring into this world, and that's okay. We're not beholden. Just because we say we want a particular thing doesn't mean that is not written in stone. That is not a failure. It is growth. If we come to a point where we decide that whatever it was that we wanted to manifest, we don't want that anymore. We've changed our mind because we did have a detour and we did learn and grow and see. Or maybe we want the same thing, but we want it in a different way, right? It's manifestation is not meant, especially in yogic philosophy, is not meant to be so rigid. It is meant to be flexible and to grow with you. So, and that trust, that surrender piece allows you to see that from a calm perspective. I also love Doug Keller. He gives this great example that I think is so fantastic. He talks about when we are not in surrender, if we're not in surrender and we're in that really contracted fight or flight state, We are like chunks of ice that are floating down the stream of life, right? The life is a flow, and it's commonly referred to as a stream. Like that's a common analogy that people make. The flow of life is like a water running through a stream. So if we are a chunk of ice, we are sort of separate, right? We're not really part of the flow of life. We're kind of bobbing on top of the flow. And our job in this manifestation process, and honestly in life in general, is to melt. And that's what surrendering is. It's melting. The ice cube melts into the stream. And so now, instead of being separate from the stream, we are part of the stream and we are moving and flowing with the stream. And when we do that, that's when we get the wider lens through which we see all of life's situations. And we feel safe. We feel safe to take risks. We feel safe to be honest with ourselves and with other people. We feel safe to re-engineer, reimagine, reverse course, right? To make those modifications to our desires. It gives us courage. It gives us creativity. This is why yoga is a process of nervous system regulation, right? This is why the ancient yogis developed it the way that they did, because when our nervous systems relax, then we can ease into all of these other creative aspects of life, including manifestation. So it's a moment by moment process, and I want you to think about it like this. If life were a dance between two people, and in this analogy, it's you and life, right? Those are the two energies that are dancing together. There is no leader in the dance. There is no follower in the dance. They're just partners, and the partners are responding to each other's moves one at a time and creating a work of art. Because if you think about a dance, it is a work of art created by two people who are in relationship and responsive to one another. And the work of art here is your life, right? So that is the beauty that you are creating. It is your life, and you are doing it with a beautiful partner called the divine. If you can surrender and have faith in your partner. So popular manifestation, I just want to like go back. I know I keep reviewing concepts, but I want to make this super clear because manifestation in the popular culture is pretty widespread. And so I want to make sure that we're being really clear on distinctions between popular manifestation and yogic manifestation. Popular manifestation basically says you have a desire. It does not signal a soul desire versus an ego desire. You visualize that desire, you believe that it will happen, and then you get an outcome, right? And you hustle along the way, right? You do the work that needs to be done as you know, the steps that need to be taken. Yoga reverses that, and it says first we step into our truth. We find that soul-based desire that is the truth that comes to the surface when we get still and quiet. Then we get ourselves into alignment, and we're going to talk a little bit more about alignment in just a second. Then we take the right actions, right, based on our alignment, and then we get a result. What that result is, maybe what you desire, or it may be something better. So living in alignment through the lens of yoga philosophy is not about perfect choices. It's not about constant clarity. It's about the right relationship with yourself, with your values, and with the intelligence of life that's moving through you. Okay, so what does it really mean to live in alignment? Let's break that down if you're a little confused about what it means. Alignment is when your inner truth and your outer life are in conversation. They're not in conflict. So I was actually just talking to another yoga teacher today about the fact that for a long while, I was feeling disjointed because, well, for multiple reasons. So I knew my inner truth as far as needing to leave my nursing profession, but I wasn't living it. I was choosing to stay in a profession that I knew I had outgrown for this stage of my life. It wasn't where I belonged anymore. And so my inner state of awareness, my truth that I knew on the inside was in direct opposition or conflict with what I was actually doing in my outer life. So your inner truth needs to be in alignment, not with just with your actions, but also with your thoughts and your words. And the other thing I've experienced in my life is that I do what I do for work, right? As a yoga teacher and a soul purpose coach and a speaker about all the things that we talk about on this podcast. And yet my husband and I were not on the same page. Our relationship was not reflective of that inner truth. And so that was really hard. That was a moment where I had to recognize that my inner truth and my outer life were not aligning, and that him and I needed to do some work. We needed to do some work to bring those two things into alignment. So, living in alignment is not always easy. And it takes awareness, it takes us being aware of when our thoughts, words, and actions are in opposition to our inner truth and to our values. So it doesn't always feel good. It can feel good, right? But it really requires that you be honest with yourself and you stop betraying what you know to be true, right? I had to leave my nursing job. I had to ask my husband for a change in our relationship. These were not easy things, but they brought me into alignment. And that does feel good. Okay. So sometimes you have to take the scary step, the courageous step. But once you do, then your life feels so much more like you. And we talk about that all the time. Your life should feel like you. And if it doesn't, that means you're out of alignment. That means somewhere, one or more places in your life, your outer life, are not reflective of your inner truth. And once again, it comes back to nervous system. If you're questioning, if you're like, I don't know, am I in alignment or am I not in alignment? When you're aligned, you feel it in your body. You feel relaxed. You can breathe deeply. Your decisions feel steadier. You feel more confident in your decision making. Your muscles relax. It's a sense of safety, internal safety, even if the what you need to do to get there feels scary. There's an internal knowing that it's right. When you're out of alignment, you have that complete opposite. Your body can be very tight, your breath very shallow. You tend to overthink things a lot. You feel pulled in many directions. You're like, I just can't make a decision. Why can't I make a decision? Because you're out of alignment. And so none of those decisions are right. And that's why you can't make one, right? You're not getting that internal knowing sensation like you do when you're in alignment. Okay. Alignment is dynamic, not static. So this goes back to what we were talking about earlier about how what we want to manifest may morph and change over time. It is a common misperception that once I get into alignment, I'm good, right? Once I left my nursing job, I'm good. Once I asked my husband for a change in our relationship, I'm good. No, alignment is a constant readjustment. It's responsive, it evolves because you evolve, right? Because you as a human change all of the time, and especially at this midlife transition. So you're letting go of identities, you're updating your desires, you're listening to new callings, right? You have to be willing to adjust and constantly be truthful with yourself about what is in alignment for you and what is not. And I can tell you as a business owner, this is huge because there's a lot of voices out there, right? Telling you what you should be doing and how you should be doing it and how to be successful and so on and so forth. But if I just listen to other people all the time, then I'm not listening to myself. And then I'm taking action that probably is not in alignment with my values, with my own nervous system, with my desires, with my life experience, with my truth, right? So we have to get quiet to know our own truth and then take steps that align with that truth. And that truth will shift and change over time as we grow and evolve. So it is a dynamic state. And when we're in that dynamic state, right? When we're willing to continuously listen and explore what's right for us, that's how we co-create with the universe. Because we listen, we respond, and then we act without attachment. And this is a big belief in yoga as well, that you have the right to your actions, but not the right to the outcome of your actions. That when we live in our truth and we do each thing, we take each step with love in our hearts and with the desire to serve ourselves, serve our families, serve our community, serve the world, that whatever outcome arrives from that action that you took is the outcome that was supposed to arrive. And then you adjust, right? You're not waiting passively. You're not forcing outcomes. You are in a dance with life. And life plays a card, and then you play a card in return. And you go back and forth forever, right? For the rest of your life. And it's so fun. It's such a journey, and it's so meaningful if we can accept that we are not in control, that we are partners, and we have a job as a partner in this relationship to live our truth, to have our inner values and truths be reflective of what's happening in our outer life, so that the divine can give us the next best card, right? The next best move in the dance. So let's talk about some examples of what alignment looks like in daily life and what it may not look like. So when you're living in alignment, it often shows up as things like saying no when you would have overridden yourself before. So out of alignment would be like, I don't really want to do this thing, but I'm going to say yes anyway because I kind of feel pressured and like I have to. Living in alignment is compassionately saying no. No is your truth. Maybe you were asked to a party and you're just tired and you have a lot on your plate, or a friend asks you to get coffee and you love your friend and you want to be there for her and you want to see her, but you're just feeling so burdened and overwhelmed. Living in alignment would be saying, I'm sorry, I can't today, right? Where maybe previously, if you were living out of alignment, you would have felt bad and you didn't want to turn your friend down and you did really want to see her, and all these things that we start, churning around in our head, right? The overthinking. You go to coffee and now you come back and you're like, oh my God, I got nothing done and I am so overwhelmed and I have so little time and it just feels bad, right? It doesn't feel good. Um, Alignment looks like making a choice that feels honest rather than impressive, right? So maybe that means turning down a promotion at work. Maybe you're offered a promotion and you're like, well, that job title would look really good. And actually, the salary would look really good, would be really great too. But I just know I wouldn't like that job. I just know that that job would not be fulfilling to me. It would be too stressful, would force me to work too many hours, whatever the reason is that job wouldn't be a good fit for you, right? So living in alignment would be turning that job down. Trusting timing instead of pushing is another example of living in alignment. So I mentioned this on previous episodes about manifestation. The answer to your desire, your soul-based desire, is always yes or something better, but it never talks about when. So when we don't trust that what we desire will show up for us, then we're trying to push, we're trying to control, and we're trying to get the outcome in a specific time frame. Living in alignment is surrendering. It is surrendering. It is trusting that what is meant for you can't miss you. What is meant for you cannot miss you. You just don't know exactly when it will arrive. And living in alignment also means becoming tolerant of living in, trying to think of the best word to use here, living in the messy middle. Uh, Instead of always knowing the right next step, which when we force and we push, right? When we do typical, like, I'm going to manifest this and make this happen, then we start doing anything and everything, right? Anything that comes across our path that someone says is a good idea, or we hear, or we watch, or we read, right? We're like, I'm going to do that, right? Because that must work, versus because we're desperate for clarity, right? We want an answer. We are really grasping and clawing, and trying desperately to not feel to feel like we're not in the messy middle, to feel like we're not in the void, right? We want an answer. What living in alignment looks like is just allowing clarity to unfold. So if you're in a moment, you're like, I just, honest to God, do not know. I don't know what the next step is that I need to take. I don't know what, I'm doing or not doing that is blocking this desire from manifesting. Allowing clarity to surface is taking time and just, going back to practices, going back to meditation, going back to journaling, going back to somatic practices, and just trusting once again that eventually clarity will come. But going back to the timing piece, it's going to come in its own time and we can't force it. And actually, the more we try to force it, the longer it will take to arrive. The more we can relax, going back to the nervous system, the more we can relax and we can expand our field of awareness, our perspective, the more possibilities that we can see. So, living in alignment does not guarantee you the life that you imagined. It offers something better, a life that feels true. And in yoga philosophy, truth is not an abstract idea. It is something you live, breathe, and embody one choice at a time. One singular choice at a time. We get to choose to live our truth or to turn away from it. And when we turn away from it, because this divine force is loving and benevolent, it will let us know. And it will let us know in the form of suffering, unfortunately. But that's how God wakes us up and says, you're off the path, right? You have, if you're going down a highway, I'm sure you've all gone down highways before and they have the rumble strips on the side. So if you're falling asleep and your car starts to veer off to the side, you get boom, 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 like the rumble strip. That's life. Life is like, okay, you are not living in alignment with your truth. And I'm gonna let you know by first sending you the rumble strip. That's where life is like, you feel discontented, right? You feel like maybe something's missing, you feel stuck, maybe you feel anxious, you feel confused, overwhelmed, right? You have a lot of like uncomfortable feelings. Maybe you feel depressed, maybe you feel purposeless, right? A lot of my clients come to me at the rumble strip. And that's where they arrive. They're in the rumble strip and they want to get back on the highway. But if you keep denying your truth, if you keep living out of alignment, then God will send you louder messages. And that means more suffering. And I don't think any of us avoid this truth in our lives. I think if you've lived long enough, you have hit the guardrail of life at some point where life literally bitch slapped you and said, wake up. I know I have. I know everyone I know has also had this experience. So what yoga helps us to do is to avoid that, to redirect ourselves, to autocorrect when we hit the rumble strip, so that we don't have to hit the guardrail. We don't have to have those big life events that are so tricky to come back from. If you have one, you were meant to have it, and that's all there is to it. But yoga does bring that awareness, that opportunity for self-correction. And that is what living in alignment is about. That is what surrender in the form of yoga is about. It's about this opportunity to wake up in your life so that you can take a soul desire and you can use it to develop yourself, to see your truth on a deeper level, and to make micro movements, micro adjustments each day to live in alignment with that truth that will then bring you closer to what you truly desire and what is meant for you. All right, so I know that was a lot. I hope it cleared up the concept of surrender and what living in alignment means. And if you have more questions about it, please let me know. Contact me. All of my links are in the show notes. So you have many ways of getting in contact with me through the show notes. If there's something that really stood out to you about this conversation, I would love to hear that as well. I'm always interested in the takeaways people come away with, because there's often a good deal of information in these podcasts. And I know you can't absorb it all at once. That is not the intention here. Every podcast you listen to, if you walk away with one or two nuggets to bring into your life, then I have done my job. So if you had one or two nuggets that really stood out for you, I'd love to hear what they were. If you would like to receive my newsletter, then use the link in the show notes for that as well. I send out a weekly newsletter. It comes out on Mondays. It is a separate topic from what we discuss here on this podcast. So you're getting more wisdom, more stories, more insight, and it's a really fun place to be. And it will also keep you updated on all of my workshops, which I am. If you are in the Medford, New Jersey area, I am hosting a half-day workshop January the 24th at the Center for Living in Medford, New Jersey. It's Finding Your North Star is the workshop. It's all about coming home to ourselves. So it's from 10 to 1. You can go to the Center for Living's website and sign up there. I will link that in the show notes as well. And then I'm also doing a workshop, a beginner meditation series at the same place at the Center for Living, starting January the 28th. It will be every other Thursday from 6 to 8:30, starting January the 28th for 4 weeks. So I'll put those links in the show notes as well. So if you're anywhere in the Medford, New Jersey area and either one of those sound interesting to you, I would love to meet you in person. All right, my friends, have a beautiful week, and I will talk to you next time.